Morning is 80 degrees, huh?
It'll be 50s by Thursday.
flipped.
Close.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is March 24th, 2015 Finance Committee meeting. Agenda tonight, we're going to vote on some of the financial policies we've been working on very diligently. Various people from across boards been doing that. And we have, of course, budget update. And start talking about some of the other things we need to do in preparation for town meeting, including the annual report and cable show and so on. And then go into at least the beginning of the warrant reviews and recommendations, as time allows. On my agenda, I have the budget update first, but I think maybe we'll switch it around, and we're going to go policies and procedures first. And so I guess the first one, we really need to vote on the CPC policy. We have not done that because we weren't posted appropriately the other night when we thought we were going to vote on it. So are there any questions on that, or do you want to discuss it anymore, or somebody want to make a motion?
It's been adopted now by the Community Preservation Committee unanimously and also by the Board of Selectmen unanimously. It had been recommended unanimously by the Financial Policies Working Group, and we've had, I don't know, looks like at least half a dozen meetings with the various boards involved to craft different iterations of it. And I think by having this policy in place in very short order, we ought to then get moving with, in the coming months, with a series of joint meetings between the Community Preservation Committee, this board, and the Board of Selectmen to go about crafting and adopting a long-range financial plan that can help guide use of CPA funds. So, and when we do that, we will be the first in the Commonwealth to undertake such an effort.
A person in mind that would kind of lead that effort? Is there someone kind of stepping up on that one, or?
Well, I hadn't thought about bringing in anybody from outside. Maybe I could get a grant from the Community Preservation Committee to do that. They actually have.
Usually,
they actually have,
say
I mean,
all these people are going to work on something.
Yeah, I mean,
they
well, that's an
kind of
excellent
own it,
question,
right?
because they have a $5,000 administration budget where if we wanted to bring in someone from outside to facilitate, which I think would be a great idea, we could do that. So, yeah, we'll put some feelers out for who could do that. That would be great. Yeah, very good.
Well, as regards to the policy proposal, if everyone's read it and doesn't have any questions, I'd move that the Finance Committee vote to adopt the Community Preservation Committee policy as proposed.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Steve? So we've now, the Financial Policies and Procedures Committee, Working Group, whatever, has obviously been meeting for the last several months, in the last few weeks in kind of a concentrated form, to go through proposals, mostly that Steve and Bonnie and the team had crafted, or suggested, proposed, and gone through and made, in some cases, big changes, in some cases, wording changes, in some cases, they were, we kept them just as they were. I think we came out the other end with something that is pretty agreeable all the way across. I wasn't sure in the beginning we were going to get there, but we seem to have gotten there, so that's a good thing. And I'm feeling pretty good. So Steve's got a nice document here where he's kind of summarized some of the changes. In some cases, we've added whole sections to the policy that weren't there before. In other cases, we've changed things. So, so tell me, from a committee, would you like Steve to just walk us through it, or have you already gone through it and you just want to go through your questions? You'd like a little walkthrough of it?
I'd like that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, so I make sure. People's time, so, if you don't mind.
Before I get started with this, I just want to mention two other policies that we have. Coming out of the working group, they'll be going to the selectmen for whenever they can get onto the agenda. One is a rewrite of the group health insurance policy It doesn't change anything, just reformats it, kind of just expands on a couple of items, but there's really nothing in the policy that we can change. It's selectmen policy on how we deal with health insurance in town, and a lot of the things are already bargained with the unions that are in there. So it just codifies how the town handles health insurance for its employees. Just in case there's a question by an employee, we could turn that policy over. The second policy also has to do with health insurance. There's a law that was enacted a couple of years ago in the state, probably 3 or 4 years ago now, that deals with health insurance reimbursements between towns. So if a employee of Littleton goes to another town and retires there, that town can bill us for time served for their portion, for our portion of their health insurance charges. And the same thing the other way, if another employee comes to Littleton, retires from here, we can bill the other town. For the past couple of years, we've been getting billed by, I don't know, half a dozen towns or so. We pay our bills to those towns. We send out bills to probably 8 to 10 towns. We probably receive payments from 4 of them. So one of the things that we enacted in this policy was kind of how we step that through the first, and this was a suggestion that came out of the committee. I have to bill the other town by January 15th for the previous fiscal year. If I don't get a payment by the end of February, I send a reminder out in March, first part of March, asking nicely, did you forget about us? If we don't hear anything, then it'll go to Keith, and Keith will send a letter to his counterpart in the town. That's by like mid-April or so. And if we still don't get an answer, the next step is the Board of Selectmen to their counterparts at the town. Or it could be a school district, one of the two.
So
it could
has
be
this
another
been going on a
school
long
committee.
time, like these towns haven't paid in years or months, or,
Some towns that have never paid us,
so years?
yeah.
Years, yeah. The law was passed, Marlboro is one of the chief offenders, the city of Marlboro.
Yeah, this is the first year for Marlboro. They owe us over $8,000, and haven't heard, hide nor hear from them.
But what is happening to us is typical of what's happening in the Commonwealth, that there are, in fact, this came up at an MMA legislative breakfast I went to in Lexington last week, that, and there are a number of the members of our delegation from representing towns in this area, that the legislature is aware that the law basically is toothless. The law that allows communities or to bill others, it has no enforcement mechanism. We are reduced to bringing other municipalities to small claims court to try to collect. Probably, for some of the larger, for some of the towns in the Commonwealth, they probably find that their town council from a big firm represents the defendant if they're trying to collect it. So the easiest thing would be to try to amend the easiest thing for administration would be if the law were amended to just have it be a cherry sheet charge. You know what? It's a cost that's incurred from one town to another. We should be able to just input the data and have it be a charge on the cherry sheet. And the communities that don't want to pay have sent the signal to their legislators that they don't want to make it any easier to get stuck with bills. So it's being looked at. People, the legislators are aware of it. But Littleton is a payer. If we get bills, we pay it, and proudly so.
Do you have any indication of towns that don't pay it, whether they're billing other towns? Are they even playing the game at all, playing the part? Do we know? I'm just curious.
I would doubt that
You're probably not billing it either then.
Just ignoring the whole
they're
thing.
just ignoring the law.
So they probably figure, yeah, it's a wash, so we'll leave it alone, you know,
You know,
more or
it
less.
generally is a wash, except for this large bill we have with Marlboro.
Right.
It would have been a wash.
The issue that may cause this to be more significant is that there's a court suit involving the town of Irving, I think, which it has similar set of facts to even what Littleton's policy is. We, like others, have the policy that that you have to have at least 10 years of service with us in order to be able to get the employer share of your group health as a retiree. Irving has a similar thing. An employee who retired there who has to pay the full freight of their group health premium challenged the rule that says it has to be at least 10 years, and the court's going to rule on that. And when that ruling comes down, it will probably change the landscape of how those things are handled. So stay tuned.
But it's not a lot of money though, right?
Not in a good way.
You know, how much is we owed? I remember seeing that somewhere. It's not a lot of money at this point,
It's
right?
under 20,000.
Under 20,000.
Yeah.
Under 20,000.
I remember seeing it
cumulative,
somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, but still, right?
but still.
But if we're paying
Yeah.
20, we might as well get 20 back.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But you know, that $8,000 bill lasts until basically the person dies. I mean, we own that person
Right.
on our health
Yeah,
insurance.
yeah. I know in Haverhill, being a city, we're just now on the school side reconciling our health insurance because no one was doing that for a while, so it's been out of control for a while. So I can understand with some of the larger cities that just keeping up with the health insurance and who's on it and who's not on it, and you know all the different plans and what. I can see them falling behind, so I don't know what's going on with these other towns, but.
Well, if you're just scraping by and someone sends you a bill from outside, it's like, you know, la, 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 la.
Yeah, and, right, I can see, I don't know if Haverhill's on that list, but I can see that happening to us because Kim is just now going, we have like thousands, so it's a lot of work for her to go through.
Well, we
the
should
list.
do with the Girl Scouts too. My wife is a Girl Scout leader, and for less than $10,
Yeah, get some information.
the local Girl Scout council threatened to dun the local group if they didn't pay in the next 20 days. And I said, send back the cookies. And it was just an accounting area.
Yeah.
You have moms doing
Yeah,
Right,
the
yeah,
thing,
right.
and you know, volunteers, and they made a $10 mistake, and the first communication they had was a threat to turn them over to, right on for Girl Scouts. Yeah, I think take a page out of their book.
The way the cookie crumbles.
There you go, boy, absolutely.
Send your retiree back to you.
Right, right. Yeah, step on the cookies and send them back, I don't know.
So I just
Okay,
mentioned
so, yeah.
those two policies, just for your information, that they exist and that they're, be going to the selectmen for their approval. For the financial policy, the people who aren't aware of the members of the group, Betsy is chair, Paul, Chris are members, myself and Bonnie are members, Mike Fontanella from the school department, and selectmen Jimmy Carr and Paula Bella. That's the group. We've met, like Betsy said, over the past few months and past couple of meetings. We've gotten a lot accomplished and approved the policy last night before the selectmen's meeting. So as Betsy said, there's a lot of new sections, a lot of new language. Some of the things involve a lot of thought process. Some are just guidance tools that we put in there as far as some certain actions that the selectmen can take. The first change is page 1, section 4, is we added a section for goals for the town. And just a listing of certain financial goals that we think were important, not really in any particular order, just things that we should be watchful of as we set the financial policy of the town. Maintain adequate reserves, improve infrastructure, minimize unfunded liabilities of the town, cost of government, stabilize the tax rates, avoid appropriation spikes, sustainable budgets, no built-in structural deficits, AAA rating. And basically, as the number one says, to guide the town officials in making financial decisions fiscally sound and consistent in practice from year to year. You know, as boards change, at least this policy lives between boards, and there's some stability that can go forward. The next section would be any questions on? You want to just go through it first and ask questions, or as we go along?
Keep going.
Whichever.
They'll speak up
Section
if they have
6
something, I
is
think. They're not a shy crowd. They'll speak up if there's a question.
maintenance of the town's credit rating. It basically just goes through and says that maintaining a AAA credit rating is important to the financial health of the community. There's some things that are out of our control in determining the AAA rating, but whatever is in our control, we'll do our best to make sure we follow what we need to follow to maintain it.
So I would assume that the changes to this document will be favorably looked upon by the rating agency?
They'll be favorably looked upon as long as we follow what we write.
Understood.
Sort
One
of
part of the two-step process.
But we had gone through the earlier transition where we got, several years ago, we got good marks from from Standard & Poor's simply for following a set of standards, even though those hadn't been codified yet. The next step was to have this board codify them and prepare the first comprehensive financial policy document. We got recognition for that as well. And now, as Steve says, the next step is to make sure we're living up to the written standard that we've set.
And they get copies of this policy. They always ask for copies of financial policies. And one of the questions that we always get in those phone calls with them is, they'll pick something out and, ask Bonnie, did we do this? What are the levels here? And
So it's like an informal audit?
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they must take note that we're updating it annually, it's not just rubber stamp.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Just so everyone knows, Bonnie's got the red line version up, so you're looking at the final version. But if you want to know what's, something's changed or what's all, you can see all this is all new. So if it's red line and underlined there, that's all new sections. So just if you have a question on that or what's different, you've got the red one there too, but just in case you don't.
Section 7 is also a new section, tax levy. One of the things that has come up in conversation over the past couple of years is ways to control the tax rate a little better than what's happened in the past. And there's been talk of leaving excess capacity on the table when we do the levy calculation. So with that in mind, we looked at it and says, okay, we can talk as a town about leaving excess levy capacity on the table as long as we meet those first 3 bulleted items, that we've met all the reserves that we said we're going to meet that are in this policy, that the 3-year financial forecast that Bonnie does doesn't show any structural deficits moving forward, factoring in what we think we're going to leave on the table. And the third thing is the town reaches and maintains funding for the OPEB and pension liabilities at the annual required contribution.
We're not doing that now, though, obviously, right?
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause what is it, like 2 million or whatever?
We've done number 1 so far.
Okay, right, okay.
Well,
So
yeah.
our forecasts are showing for structural deficits moving
Yeah,
forward.
Number 3 negates any excess funding for the next 25
Yeah,
years.
yeah, that's not going anywhere,
Well,
right?
we're to the ARC. Now, it's not saying fully funded, it's saying
Yeah.
to the
The
required
annual
contribution.
contribution.
Right, yeah,
We're
right.
about 50% there already.
Well, what is the ARC, though? I thought it was
$2
like...
million a year.
Yeah, 2 million,
And
okay.
we're about $1 million.
Right.
Okay, all right, okay.
It's 2 million all in with the light department, the water department, the payments are already making on behalf of the retirees. That all gets factored into what the ARC is.
Right, okay.
So even a portion of our expense that's going to health insurance right now gets counted toward the ARC. 'cause
Really?
it's- Because it's for the retirees. That's-
Oh, because you built all of it in, right?
Yep.
Okay, yep.
If we truly are around 50%, where does that rank us amongst all the cities and towns?
I think,
So
Because we've got to be,
I think it's Hopkinton. Hopkinton is going into this town meeting with visions of,
funding it
reaching
fully?
beyond.
funding it, yep.
Yeah.
And their town treasurer has done a little informal survey of some towns. And has found that there's like 9 different towns. And he certainly hasn't gone across the state, but locally in this area, there's like 9 different towns that are already reaching the ARC each year.
Okay.
And it's
Right.
towns that, you know, you wouldn't think of that would be able to do it. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I was surprised at a few of them.
But for us funding at 50% is above average compared to the whole state or below? I'd say it was above, right?
I
Yeah.
think,
Right,
in totality, I
Yeah.
think it's above average,
right.
but
But, yeah, there's...
the longer it takes us to get there, the further we fall behind.
Yeah, right, the bigger the hole's getting, right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's important, at least to try and maintain, improve as we can.
So we'll put that in next year's budget then?
It's in every year.
When are you going to figure that in your projections?
Well, we've got a big lump of debt service coming off. That's-
But that's
Can we
still
bond it?
Still not an annual thing though, right? That helps with the overall deficit, but not the ARC. ARC is like an operating, it's like an every year thing, right? It's really more of an operating expense.
Yeah, well, once we get up to that level, then, it should level off in theory.
But the ARC must go up every year then, obviously, right? Obviously fluctuates, right? It depends on...
It's going to fluctuate because we're still behind, like we can meet what we're supposed to
Oh, because
contribute
it carries
today,
over, it carries
but
what
we're
you
still
fell behind
from-
on? Okay.
Yeah, we're still behind from
Yeah.
years past.
Right.
That's the
got to
problem.
be bigger than the bread box, right? It's got to be 20 million.
So the ARC is really just for this year, for
Yep.
what you would have to do. It has nothing to do with how much you owe in the total or anything like that. It doesn't change. Like if you pay off, if we get all caught up over here, then the ARC goes down. The ARC is just this
The
year's.
ARC is
It
what
really
we
is
need to
just this year.
contribute for
This
today's
year.
population moving forward, yes.
Yeah.
So we
Yep.
still have an unfunded liability
Right,
that's,
so
that's,
that could go there.
the unfunded for the previous years is growing, I think it's like 8 or 9 million at this point. Going out the other way for, looking out is like 36 million, so,
Yeah. That's real money.
Yeah.
that is.
Okay, on
So
that happy
once,
thought,
once those 3 things are met, we said, okay, now we can talk about leaving capacity on the table. And this kind of goes hand in hand with a future section that talks about the annual town meeting and the requirement that the Finance Committee and Selectmen imposed last year to go into town meeting with a balanced budget. So these 2 things kind of go hand in hand. What we're saying is that the excess levy capacity that we would leave on the table would come from new growth that exceeded the levels that were used to create the budget for the year. So if Bonnie in her forecast said new growth is going to be 500,000, and it comes in at 700,000, well, there's 200,000 that's available to be set aside as unused levy capacity. So we wouldn't tax on that 200,000. We'd take it off the table. There's some other provisions later on when we talk about the town meeting article that says, what you could also do with those funds. But for this section, that's the availability. The problem that happens when you start leaving money off the table like that is the next board can come in
Right.
and say, well, what were they thinking? I'm going to
Right.
take that excess capacity and raise it all in 1 year. So you not only have the 2.5% increase on the levy, but you have whatever they're bringing back from that was taken off the table before. So then you have tax hikes, tax spikes, and those spikes can be pretty large. So with that in mind, we went through and we said that those excess levies that are bringing back on the table can be used to replenish reserve levels for unforeseen emergencies. So if the town goes through a catastrophe, and we've gone through our stabilization fund that we use for, we can also tap these excess levies, raise it in a year, as long as there's a plan to put it back in the following fiscal year. We can replace potential debt exclusion items or cover existing debt exclusion payments. So we can take this, and if we have a project that's going to be a debt exclusion, we can either pay down the debt or pay down the project before we finance the debt. It's another thing that can happen. And again, the amount of excess levy capacity used in a single year or for a specific event must be replenished the following fiscal year or after the specific event has been satisfied. So there are restrictions, so it gives us some flexibility, but it puts controls on how we can use those funds, because there is a danger. Okay? Questions?
Good policy.
The Section 8 split tax rate. This has again been another topic that's been under discussion for a couple of years now, especially this year when we went and potentially could have gone over the 150% in the calculation between commercial and residential on the split. This just gives guidance to the selectmen on things that they should be looking at, to be mindful of the 150 CIP factor. Every effort should be made not to exceed this 150% factor. And it talks about what could happen. Future years, the calculation could shift back, and then we're stuck with another tax hike to the residents.
Well, at this point, Paul, their flexibility is gone, right? Because we're virtually at 150, or close to it.
And we came down to this last year. It's still close, but not as close as it could have been.
Yeah, what is it, 140 something?
45.
Okay, so,
Just
yeah,
getting-
so there's not a whole heck of a lot.
No, there's not a whole heck of a lot of them, no.
For them to diddle around with.
But
okay.
we were right up against the previous year. Okay, Section 9, abatements. This, in the previous section, Section 8, talk about the selectmen, the assessors, finance committee, town administrator, finance director, town treasurer, and the chief assessor having a working group before the classification hearing, so that everyone's on the same page as to what can happen. What are the pitfalls of doing this? What are the benefits of doing this? That way, everybody really has a common idea when they go into that classification hearing.
You said working group, you mean a working session, just a section?
Working session,
Right.
just to go through.
Yeah, who's responsible for calling that meeting?
I would think, since it's selectmen's policy, I would imagine it would be the selectmen.
Well, to me, it should be stated in here, who's responsible to, so when it doesn't happen, you can go and ask, why didn't it happen? Just,
Well, I mean, typically, if something is adopted as a selectmen's policy, then staff implements it. So if there's a policy that says there shall be a working group meeting prior to the classification hearing, we will schedule it.
okay, so somebody
It'll
in
get
the finance
done.
will
Yeah,
get
it'll get
scheduled,
done
okay.
when
You want to
finance
start
and
making notes for next year's group? That's something maybe we want to talk about the wording for that a little bit to make it a little more clear.
As a matter of course, we actually do reach out to the selectmen prior to the tax classification hearing to offer, to have them come in and sit down with us informally. So we're just.
And every year we have,
Yeah, one or
someone
two.
stop by, and at least the past 4 or 5 years, we've had a different selectman come by, and just to learn. It's a difficult topic to understand. It's not the easiest thing.
Okay,
So we'll just formalize that.
okay.
In section 9, just to kind of go into that working session, is the topic of abatements. The selectmen really don't have an idea, at least I don't believe that they do, the level of abatements that could happen in a particular year, or do happen in a particular year. And those affect the valuations that go on and how much that's being shifted to the rest of the tax base. So whether it's just an informal, the assessors talk to the selectmen or give a memo to the selectmen after the abatement process is done, this is the effects of it, this is what happened, this is what we see, this is who we're taking to the appellate tax board. Just something that puts a little bit more to that classification hearing, so people understand a little better. So that's
Is there
just,
some annual reporting that comes out, like when they have, the Board of Assessors makes these determinations? I mean, does the selectmen approve that? No, they say it. So
that's totally up to
just
the
some
assessors.
reporting though that comes out? They're not really, it's kind of happens. Interesting.
In fact,
Is there anything?
well, this, I don't know.
We enter the data into the gateway, not by, parcel, but in summary, we enter the
Yeah,
amount of the
by
abatements.
class,
and-
the information gets, but, and the particulars of some, abatement cases involve confidential information. If it's,
But at
I
a
mean,
summary,
the law grants that to the,
but in a summary format, it would be good just to see.
this is how much commercial value that
Yeah,
went away this
exactly,
year,
it's like
that
that.
is now being pushed out.
Yeah, how many
This is the
abatements
tax
were filed,
consequences.
what was it
of that.
valued at, what was the loss, what was the amount of abated by class?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it $1,000 or is it $1 million? And I think it'd be just interesting, and what impact does that have going back?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to track that over time, too,
Right.
where in a year, I mean, is there a correlation between shifting the tax rate in one direction or another that causes one class of property or another to see a spike in?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think just be
I
interesting to see.
had- Last year, for example, when we were right against that 150, we were expecting every business in town to be in, and there was none. It was very surprising. Different story this year, I think.
Okay.
Section 10, also a new section, tax relief programs. It basically just says that tax relief programs should be encouraged, but we should know what we're really getting into. What are the effects of those tax relief programs to both the taxpayer and the community overall?
What kind of examples would there be? I mean, are these
Elderly,
elderly
veterans,
tax or?
Blind, veteran.
Veterans, yeah.
veterans
Okay.
of small income.
Mhm.
Tips and pilot agreements. This section, also new, just talks about that tips and pilots do exist out there, and that the selectmen should be putting a group together, and that all agreements are governed by Mass General Law. It's kind of like a placeholder language. We're talking about possibly in the next iteration to put an appendix like the CPC appendix that outlines the TIF process a little better. Basically what the town wants to see, what, the different areas that we should be targeting, the different
The
businesses.
analysis that we
Yeah,
do, that's
what types of analysis needs to be done, how much are we willing to give up? Is there a total that we want to put out there X% of the levy that says, oh, we reached our TIF maximum that we're going to give out, you know. Things we should be thinking of.
And no more until we.
Yeah, until that level
that
comes
kind of
down.
thing, yeah, okay.
The last paragraph in that, Steve, where would we, why would the selectmen want to continue a TIF that's been decertified by the Commonwealth?
It goes on, basically. Right? Am I correct in that?
Right, I believe that the way that it is now, if the TIF is decertified by the Commonwealth, the TIF is given by the Board of Selectmen, so it doesn't automatically go away. It stays until the board takes an action to remove it.
So the state can
Still my
take away
question.
their piece.
Right, and we can still
the
have ours.
Town is still on the hook for our piece.
Well, they're free.
Unless the selectmen
Yeah.
choose to also decertify it or do whatever.
Adopting the policy would make it a handy thing it would be handy guidance to have,
Right.
so that as the circumstance arises, that we don't have the option to continue. Which now under the law we do.
But I guess to Fred's point, the initial point, not that we really discussed it much, but there conceivably could be a case where the state decertified it, and for whatever reasons, the board might still want to continue the break for the company because it's working out well. I mean, believe me, I wouldn't be an advocate for that, but
Right.
that right is there.
Well, we had, when it was about a year or so or more ago, we had that issue come up with the Curtis Wright controls, that they were decertified by the Commonwealth, and we're still carrying them.
Okay.
As a local,
So decertification by the Commonwealth only means that Commonwealth is no longer giving them anything.
right, right.
Doesn't mean that they're bad guys or they did something wrong.
Well,
They
even
haven't met their
candidates, they didn't
benchmarks.
hire the number of people they said they were going to hire.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the issue is worthy of discussion as a matter of policy, like what do you do? And I sat in the meeting that our previous chair, Ted Doucette, had with the guy who was left at Curtis Wright to shut the light on. And it's like, okay, well, and they still had a presence there, but was it that we were going to kick them on the way out for what was a really de minimis amount? Or were we going to just say, well, you're not, obviously you're downsizing, you're on your way out, and maybe the larger issue from a policy standpoint is, it's not a dollar amount that they get as a TIF, it's a percentage. So if business goes down, and for business that is, whose value is assessed on the income approach, if their income goes down, and their percentage is the same, then the amount of the taxes they pay and the value of the discount that they get on the increment are all plummeting. I mean, so it ended up being a pretty small amount of money, and it was, you didn't want to.
Does the form of valuation chosen, does that come into the negotiation on these TIFs? Does the town get to say, we want you to do the income approach, or we want you to do the...
No, in fact, we don't. That the law says that the assessors have complete control over...
So it's whatever their standard is?
Whatever the
Yeah.
valuation is, so it's really it's whatever the assessors are using. And in the case of recent negotiations with Potpourri Group, for example, that became quite an issue because we wanted to be able to make a business deal with some knowledge of what's the cash value to them, what's the cash discount value to the town. And the only way we could do that is by sort of going through the motions of what would the value of the property be. And we brought in our guy, Ken George, who represents the Appellate Tax Board, and he used to chair the ATV, and he sat down with our bargaining group, and we came to the common understanding that even though they were investing $49 million in, that it would have an increase, that would have an assessed value of $18 million. And so therefore, and we came to a common understanding that that's what it was, based on the income approach. And therefore could make the business deal, if it's 18, then it's $3.5 million in taxes, and, you know, and we spread it out the right way and so on. But we don't have the ability to, but we could not contractually agree on what the value was. So if, even with any TIF, if the using the income approach, if it's less profitable than we thought it was going to be, then they're paying less taxes, and the cash value of the discount is less. And if they do better, then we get more.
Right.
So.
Anyway, but this reads that if they do get decertified, they're automatically basically decertified here unless we vote to keep it going. So,
Yeah.
Section 12, this is a existing section, but we had some changes to some of the bullet points.
bring up the red line version?
Yeah,
Do you
sure.
have it?
He's
Oh, I see, okay.
I had, yeah, the reason I took it down, because I saw the red line didn't have any of the numbering in it, so I was getting confused.
What is section 12, Steve?
What's section 12, by the way?
The undesignated fund balance free cash.
Okay.
Page 5.
Page 5.
5%.
So maintain a minimum undesignated fund balance of 5% of the operating budget from the current 2.5%. And the benchmark level increased to 7.5% from the existing 5%.
Is that what we're currently maintaining?
Yes. The original policy was drafted, back in 2010 maybe, or with
That was-
these
yeah, yeah.
language, and we weren't really maintaining the balance in undesignated at that point. So we've been able to get to where we should be, and most other communities, try and maintain it at 5%.
Well, you have to have it at 5, right?
No.
No.
No?
No.
Doesn't that affect your bond rating or something, having it at 5?
It definitely
Well, you have
is
to, isn't that what
looked
they
at
look for?
favorably.
They, like a bare minimum they're looking for?
Yeah, 5% is pretty much the standard.
Yeah,
But
okay, right.
there are communities out there that, are not maintaining anything. There's no requirement to maintain it.
And that's why they have obviously a horrible bond rating.
The other change was on item B, capital projects. Appropriate amounts up to 2.5% of the operating budget. It was 2%. Okay. Did you want to add anything to that one?
No.
13, stabilization, from the original draft, and you see it in the red line section, you once noticed it here, but a couple of the bullet points that were in the old stabilization section went to its separate item on the capital side, sort of capital stabilization. It just fit better there, those two bullets. There's 13, section 14, debt management. We added the second bullet. When used, non-revenue supported debt should be targeted toward the town's commitment to maintaining and improving the existing infrastructure. Okay?
Good.
And then you see the capital and maintenance needs are further down. Maintenance is new in that section, that bullet. 14, 15 revolving funds and enterprise funds. This is another new section. It basically says that we're going to run revolving funds and enterprise funds according to Mass General Law.
Now, back to that, capital and maintenance needs are not displaced by fiscal demands of current operations. Isn't that what we just did with the school department? Did we displace, or actually,
No.
we didn't displace it, but we kind of
We
shifted
put it
things
where we-
around. to-
We put it where we keep an eye on it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, fiscal demands of current operations, okay.
One of the things about putting items in separate articles is they have to be spent
Yeah,
for that
right, for
purpose.
that purpose, it, goes back to free cash or whatever, right?
Again, revolving and enterprise funds is, just basically follows Mass General Law on that, but it was a recommendation, I think, of last year's group that some section like that get into this policy.
Was there any discussion wrapped around section 15 on increasing the number of revolving funds or enterprise funds? Are there any, I know you and Steve have been working diligently on the town side, anything that should be put into a revolving fund or an enterprise fund is managed that way. And there was some question brought up earlier on whether things like transportation on the schools should be a revolving fund or an enterprise fund, or other kinds of things within the school budget should be set up that way. And again, I'm asking because we're saying, okay, we're going to do it by Mass General Law. Does Mass General Law state that things like buses or things like whatever the heck else are in there should be run as revolving funds, which we aren't
We
doing
didn't
now?
dig in that
I don't
deep.
know, is it?
Other than the conversation level you're talking about, that's the extent to which it got on our radar screen. There's more work for next year and years to come, but that's,
Okay.
yeah, we just had to get a marker in here at some
Yeah,
level.
I think this is fine, but it just
It's a good
sparked the
question.
thought, is there anything in the law that says those kinds of things should in fact be run as revolving or enterprise funds?
I think the way the law was really prefaced is that everything has to go to the general fund unless you decide that you want to run it through a revolving fund. So the impetus, everything should go into the general fund ideally and be budgeted that way.
Yeah. Which is what
There
it's
are
supposed to be.
allowed revolving funds, but
Sometimes it's revenue specific, let's say with the, typically with a water or wastewater enterprise fund. You set it up because some of
Well,
the,
that's-
because
It's a
the,
business
because the
activity.
revenues that you're raising, you want to
Really
have enough to
go back to-
be able to pay for capital costs associated with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the borrowing that you get for major water or wastewater capital projects requires that there be a separate fund established so that the money that's coming in for
Has a
that
place
particular,
to
from
go, right.
outside, from the
At
feds
the
or the
bottom.
state or wherever,
Okay.
don't commingle with
Okay.
it. Yeah.
All right.
Section 16, Community Preservation Act, again, a new section, recognizes the fact that these funds do exist in the town, that the town that assesses a 1% surcharge does have the ability to put 3% limit imposed by Mass General Law into the fund, and then refers to the new appendix that you just voted prior to this. Okay.
Probably worth noting that so far we have exactly one appendix, but the working model is that rather than get too much detail in some topics that deserve it in the main document, use them as appendices and just stick to the policy level discussion in the document.
Tip pilot, probably the next one will come up like that.
Right.
Revenues. Again, new section, says that we forecast the revenues, gives Bonnie some guidance as to how they'll be doing it, but according to the town bylaw, revenue is Bonnie's responsibility.
Sure, appropriate.
And she doesn't part with it easily.
The Ouija board is, she has
Very
that, she
conservative.
has that app on
Yeah.
her phone, right?
But other things, that, like a little further down on the screen, Keith, the second bullet, and the town will be aggressive in the collection of all receivables, including current and prior year property taxes, and strive for a 98% collection rate. I mean, that's important.
We're about that, I mean, we got a really high level now, right, or we have had?
Yep.
Yeah, we're like 99 point.
That's what I thought.
But still, in tax title accounts that come over each year, is probably like $300,000.
Sure.
Worth of tax title
2% of
accounts.
30 million
Yeah,
is
still,
still a lot of money.
right.
The first letter, Fred, that we send out has a cookie in it.
Focusing on collecting
They're right.
2%. Towns would say, we're doing fine. Is it, really?
Interesting, good.
A cookie, and oh, by the way, your property's in tax title.
There you go, right?
I try and be nice on the first letter. That's about it. Section 19, annual town meeting appropriation. I referenced this a little beforehand. This says that we will go to the May town meeting with a balanced budget.
But we kind of backed away from it a little bit, right? Didn't we say we had to before?
Well, you know, here it says we will make every
We're making an
effort.
effort now, and so there's nothing that's preventing us from.
Well, and this is a selectmen's policy.
Well, it's a
Well, it's the
town's.
financial
It's a joint-
management policy that was
We
jointly
voted
adopted
earlier,
it was
by
a
your
selectmen's
board.
policy.
Right, well, we changed that.
Well,
Well, I don't, you know, if, it may have been
Well,
practice, but.
Oh, you mean that specific item is a selectmen's policy?
well, this document is a selectmen's policy.
Voted by the FinCom too.
Yeah, the financial policy document is intended for joint adoption by this board and by the Board of Selectmen.
It was always intended that way.
Yeah, I
Right,
don't
but-
know why it wouldn't be.
We're the ones who
By
who wrote it to begin
DOR
with.
statute, it's our responsibility to present a balanced budget to town meeting.
It hasn't been the case in the past couple of
Right,
years.
because we've waffled on it.
Well, I think it was, no, DOR it said it was okay, you didn't have to, right?
Yeah,
Well-
you just have to have a balanced budget by the time you set the tax rate.
By the time you hit the tax rate, it's got to be in balance.
Which is the practice we fell into for a couple of years,
Yeah,
but,
Right, which we
Yeah,
need
for-
to get
right.
out of.
right.
The answer to DOR would be that in May, we give it the first shot, and we fix it in November before we set the tax rate,
If we need to.
if need be. So
So
this will say we fix it in May.
Right.
this,
Be a little more
this,
aggressive and fix it.
Yeah.
this fixes it in May and basically says that the budget you vote in May, if it's good enough for the budget in May, it's good enough for November. So any additional revenues that come in over and above Bonnie's forecast cannot be added
Right,
to the
yeah,
operating budget.
Right, yeah, that shouldn't be right.
And it's used for one-time expenditures or OPEB funding or pension funding.
That's right.
With one-
In a typical year, the main thing that would be in play, even with the standard, would be the snow and ice deficit. That will not be the case this year, but typically, it's what do we use that reserve, which is set aside in the spending plan, and you want to raise it rather than lose it. And so we would bring it to a November town meeting for a one-time appropriations.
The one exception to what I just mentioned would be if we went into Maytown meeting with budget cuts. So we reduced the previous year's budget. We laid off people because we didn't have the revenue stream to do it. And all of a sudden, after town meeting comes, the revenue stream comes back. We determine that it's a sustainable revenue source going forward. Whatever happened, it reversed
Well, then,
itself.
yeah, we did something wrong if that was the case, right?
So-
Bonnie did something wrong.
Well, it could be the states, you know,
Somebody's not
the state
wrong.
cut things significantly in May, and then they reversed themselves in July, you know, that could be something along those
Yeah.
lines, too.
In that case, we're able to reinstate those budget cuts that happened in the May town meeting and bring those funds back to the operating budget.
And that language is in here.
Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Section 21. 21. We added definition
Section
of,
20, number 4.
yep,
Are we doing that?
Oh, God,
Hmm?
yeah. Yeah.
200,000 was the 5-year rolling average?
Combined with the deficit.
the deficit
With the
that's
deficit, okay.
included each
Okay.
year. So she has to budget the Sunrise deficit each year.
The total budget includes the appropriated amount of
Okay, so
200
it doesn't say
plus
we
the
should appropriate
budgeted
on the
deficit.
5-year rolling average? Okay.
Once you appropriate, you
Okay.
can't unappropriate.
Okay.
Where was I? Oh, 21, capital exclusions and stabilization funds. That is, added the definition of capital incorporated items moved from the stabilization section that I mentioned previously. So those, I think, were the last two items on that listing that came from that stabilization section. And the definition of capital is that first part of that capital investment plan is prepared from a townwide perspective. That section is where capital is defined. Okay. Section 22, exclusions. Provides guidance in the paying of excluded debt and establishment of a debt exclusion stabilization fund, which would have to go to town meeting to be authorized. But essentially, it's another stabilization fund that the town can use. Excess receipts can be put into that fund to help pay for debt excluded items in the future, either to pay down the debt or to reduce the cost of the project beforehand. And there's some guidance in there to say, be careful how you pay down the debt to make sure that it's sustainable the next year, because you could be causing a hike in taxes if that level of debt exclusion isn't maintained. So debt service on debt
Right,
excluded items decreases each
Oh,
year.
yeah, right,
So you could
Right.
have it meet at a certain year by funding on a decreasing scale, so that there wouldn't be a tax spike. Okay?
Was there any discussion in your subgroup over mitigation funds?
That's one section that we had something in here for, and we...
Wait till next year.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things we haven't.
That's a to be
discussed.
continued. Yeah.
Seems to be a
There's a
big bunch of money every once in a while.
short list of things we didn't get.
Okay. So it's on the radar screen.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What was your comment, Keith? We didn't want to be perfect or something?
Yeah, you didn't want to get it all done in 1 year, so you wanted to.
Don't kill the job.
That's a,
These policies are job security.
okay, that's fine, just so it's on the radar screen.
Yeah. And we welcome more, especially since someone else may be sitting at the table.
Section 24 is a new section, employee costs and union and non-union employees. This is language that Bonnie and I have been kicking around for a couple of years now, and I know she's included in almost every financial memo that she's done in the past couple of years as her ending paragraph. But it says we need to be cognizant as we move forward, when we negotiate contracts, of the total cost of those contracts that we're negotiating, and even to go into those contracts with a budget in mind. This is what we know we're going to be spending over those 3-year periods, and make it work that way. Also to watch out for when we're calculating, and Bonnie does her presentation, as far as when we're hiring a new employee or replacing an employee, to include costs like pension and OPEB in that calculation, because it is an expense. It's not, something that's to the forefront, but it costs money. And it's all part of that $36 million that's unfunded. It just keeps growing. Okay, so this is more guidance that we put in there. And section 25 is a budget calendar. Dates here, just approximations. Bonnie would publish the actual budget calendar at the start of each budget session. But these are some things that we discussed, and the times seem to fit.
So Mike agreed with that, school department, school
Yep.
committee?
Yes, the
I
school
saw
department
some of the
did.
meeting, and he, agreed to it tentatively. I guess he was supposed to wait for get back from the committee. Is this?
He was okay with this.
Yep.
All
He
right.
said there would be some things, because unlike the other town departments that are, keep going through the summer, the schools kind of stop. So in September, they're starting up. So some of what are their plans for the year, some of that stuff, they're not gonna have in the middle of October like everybody else will, and that's fair. But
They'll have more than they had.
Well, we'll have way more than we had, and just the focus on we need it sooner in order to work this.
That's
And
true,
that was-
except that the people who do this are working through the summer. It's only the kids and teachers that aren't here.
Yeah, right.
The
Central
people who do this
office is there
kind of
all year
work
long.
are working right alongside of Bonnie on the same days.
His participation was terrific.
right,
and
right.
We'll
It
get
was a
there,
positive
right, we'll
step,
get
so.
there.
He did say that he would like presentation of this policy to the school committee.
That's
Right,
true,
he did.
right.
Yep. Right.
So we
So
should
it's-
hold him to that.
Yeah, well, that's
Gets
good.
them to buy in, too.
Yeah, I
And
want them to buy
When
in.
you
I
think
would-
of their
We're all in
cycle,
together, yeah.
when you think of
It
their
would make
cycle,
life a lot simpler for everybody if they buy into this policy and maybe take a look at the timeline that they use for their budgeting
Right.
and back it off a little bit so that it's not
and that's
That's-
exactly,
that's what's in
budget
here.
presentation a week before the budget has to be complete.
that's exactly what Mike said at the meeting, that they would have to take their cycle and back into our dates.
Good,
See if it's
that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like 3 significant dates here, which are effectively changes, and he spoke to each of them. It was October 31st, submitting their initial budget
That'll
projections.
be,
Yeah, and then, by the time of the Saturday meeting, I mean, they'd be making a
they'd be
presentation based on
interacting,
that.
Participating.
And then by December 15th, which is fully, 2-3 months ahead of where they were at historically,
right.
is when they'll give the detailed budget and data.
I
we
think
can live with
those
that.
dates up, I think that's great.
This is more in line with what every other school district's doing, so it's not like they're really,
When-
And I think we'll continue to work on the formatting to the numbers, so there's something that makes sense for us as opposed to what they need to do.
But when you think of their cycle, I mean, they showed up to your Saturday meeting with the number that they wanted, 1.1
They did.
million,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. and they backed
You're right.
off.
Absolutely
That
right.
didn't
They did.
change.
They got there
You're right.
somehow, so,
Until
yeah.
February,
Right.
so
Yeah.
they had the data,
Right.
they had the things that
Yeah,
backed it
right,
up,
Right,
Yep.
they just didn't give it to us until February.
yeah,
Yep.
And when they gave us the data, it was $1.1 million, exactly what they
yeah.
knew about in November.
Yep.
But by getting it earlier, because once we got the detailed data, then the finance department could do to the school budget what is done for all the other budgets, and that is check the math.
Right.
Check,
Right.
make sure that your budget assumptions are correct, prove the numbers, and then we have the basis for a dialogue.
Right.
Right. And the conversation couldn't start until we got those numbers.
The only addition I would make is that the Saturday meeting should not coincide with the town fair. Ran into
Right.
that,
Yeah,
but
well,
nobody showed
Right.
It
up.
does say that these are approximations up
Right,
here.
right, right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The only other thing that we talked about on the schedule, not to make a change about it, but that I'm concerned about how the special town meeting rubs up right against this, the coming year's budget. And the relief could be to have town meeting in the fall be in October. rather than November.
It had been
Which we can,
before.
which we can do. I mean, we've set the policy that that the warrant closes 45 days prior to town meeting, which would push us into August for the warrant closing. That we'd simply have to adjust to that schedule.
Less articles, less
But-
spending.
But I would think that we've got to do something so that there's not a
Yeah.
crunch on the finance
Right.
team.
Yeah, because a lot of things happen at the
Special
same
town
time.
meeting, And setting, and
Yeah,
getting
so
the
Yeah, we,
obviously
the
too
tax
much.
rate classification.
that was all happening at the
set,
same time
and the
last year.
budget. No, it's too much.
So is that something we can do for this fall? Is
Yeah.
that the plan?
Just set
to
an
do
earlier
that?
date.
Yeah, we could do that.
Couple of things, these have all come up one way or the other, but I was just gonna mention to the rest of the group that wasn't part of the working group, there are topics that aren't addressed in here that we anticipate addressing. One of those was the mitigation, and one of those was having a more defined process for the fall special town meeting, you know, absent the talk about having it earlier, just the notion that bigger dollars are flying around and what's gonna be our process for, you know, prioritizing. And then there's topics that are in here, which I think we all anticipate will be expanded or whatever, adapted over time, the TIF, the CPC stuff. It's great getting the first-time language on employee costs, but if we're ever gonna get anything more in policy about collective bargaining rules, you know, those sort of things, that would be the place for it. Enterprise funds, Fred, that you added to the list, I mean, there's already a good little working list for the next year's group to tackle. But this, I mean, just that red ink tells the story, I mean, how far we've come. I mean, the policies that, won all the plaudits that you guys were working in-house, I think what we're effectively doing now is just kind of broadening that out to kind of put the boards into the same level of accountability. That's the way I look at them. You guys were already, the finance team following rigorous, rules. Now, the rest of us will, hopefully.
Good job.
Yeah, great job.
Your motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Steve, and Bonnie, very much for all that work and getting
So
something
I can
together.
take that up on April 13th for next week.
Wonderful.
We get the water department coming in or not?
Yeah, is he coming tonight?
So
No,
Scott
no,
had it?
no, I'm sorry, he can't, he had to cancel, he couldn't come today because of the very fine, he had to meet with his board, so he's gonna come he's gonna come to the next meeting.
I know I missed last week, and I think Bonnie might have given you an update on the Shoba Tech presentation. But were we gonna have anybody come in? I think Charlie was willing to come in.
Yeah, he did say he would be willing to come in.
He probably just talked right from that presentation. Did you already give that? Or
I handed the information out, but I didn't walk through
Charlie
it.
Ellis probably ought to.
Okay, so we'll get him
Contact
come next time, okay.
It was funny when you mentioned the assessment being lower, and Mike Fontenot was like, oh, he was like doing the math in his head. I thought that was kind of funny. I think he was gonna be looking for that on. take it
Already
off the
gone.
top. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
ready to look for that. Oh, well, last thought I wrote.
Hey, can't blame the guy for trying.
No, but it was funny, his reaction when,
Right.
when Bonnie said that the assessments were lower. He just was instantly jumped into the numbers in his head. It was just funny to see his reaction.
Okay, budget update?
Well, basically, we are in balance, and the information for the detailed budget is contained in the report, and I'll walk through that with you after.
Okay.
But I just wanted to give you a heads up for this fiscal year with the snow and ice budget. As of today, there is a $400,000 deficit. We can go to $450,000.
Yeah, right.
And you might remember I asked Keith to put an article on the special town meeting in case we went over it. I spoke with Jimmy Clyde. I think we're going to go over it.
Really?
Yeah, there's $25,000 in bills up in my office right now. We haven't paid the stipends out, which are about $20,000. The fuel costs haven't been allocated. I think we're going to be somewhere in excess of $475,000. So
What are we expecting back from the state?
it won't come until after June 30th, at best. The state has not ruled, or FEMA has not ruled whether they will consider all of those storm costs as one event and give us the 75% reimbursement on those costs. They're just now analyzing the cost for the first storm, Juno, to see if that hit the threshold.
Is the state looking for like 200 million or something out of the feds? I thought I read that somewhere
Yeah,
today.
I mean, they put the application in and the paperwork in, but we haven't received any
What was the email we just got that the governor allocated some extra money? What was that?
pothole money.
Pothole money.
Chapter 90 funds, yeah, $58,000 that we must spend by June 30, additional.
That shouldn't be hard.
No.
Use all that on Coughlin Road.
Yeah.
Or on Foster Street.
Yeah,
Russell Street.
I know.
Any of them. So Jimmy Clyde is putting together the paperwork for that, spending plan. But we will probably, in all likelihood, use it on the contractor that we've already procured for pothole repairs.
Now, do we have to expend everything we had budgeted plus the 58, or can he just spend the 58?
Probably spend the 58 first, I would
They'll
think,
spend
right?
the 58
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
with
Right.
Chapter 90
Absolutely.
money, because the other Chapter 90 money does not turn into a pumpkin.
Right.
Okay.
So we can
But,
keep it
I
moving.
mean, there's plenty of work to be done out there, certainly.
Plenty of work.
Okay.
So we will likely have to
$2.9
populate.
million on
New
Paul's
estate.
road alone, so.
Well,
Unless it's stalled by litigation.
Why don't we just not do that?
New landscaping and all that.
Yeah, we'll free
No,
up,
I'd be happy to keep the old landscaping.
we'll
things.
free up that money. so.
Okay.
So we will likely populate that article with some amount of funding from free cash or undesignated fund balance, which is available. And it fits within the policy. It's an extraordinary year.
But as a practical matter, we have a high level of confidence that, for at least the first storm, that we could get
Something.
75% of the eligible cost for that, which would,
Right.
from what Bonnie's saying, sounds like it would be, what we're putting out now we'll get back more than that
Right.
for the first storm. What we don't know is how much we'll get back speculatively for the following three storms, because that, because
But
the
theoretically,
governor's submitting one application, FEMA only approves per incident, and the governor, I guess, has been coached to submit all four separate storms as one incident. And
Well, the time frame was so compressed, he might be able to get away with that.
maybe, yeah.
So the money would come in after the first, so it's 2017 money?
16. We come in fiscal 16.
It'll come in fiscal 16.
Right.
So we would have to address that in the fall town meeting if we were to use it.
It would be a general fund appropriation. If you wanted to expend it for something, then it would have to be addressed in the fall. Otherwise, it would
Otherwise,
just...
it'll show up in free
Just roll
cash.
Free cash
Yeah,
going
right.
for
Just rolls
17.
in.
Yes, and typically what DOR likes you to do is if you get money in, even if it was 15 money and you get it in 16, you can use it towards 16's deficit, whatever snow and ice deficit you might have coming up. So you just net it against it when I close the general fund.
Okay, so we wouldn't have,
You wouldn't have to do
wouldn't
it.
have to appropriate
No.
it. Okay, I was just thinking if it came in, do we have to address it in October town meeting, or do we not?
You don't have to. This typically happens annually. There's always some small, it's usually not a significant amount, but there's typically
Okay.
a small amount that comes in. And DOR prefers that you treat it as applying it towards the deficit for that fiscal year. And just netting it that way.
Okay, so in either event, it would potentially create a free cash
Bump.
Bluebird
Yeah.
for 17, a one time,
Yep.
because of that, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's where we are for 15. Everything else for 15 seems to be tracking a little bit ahead on the revenue side. We did receive some additional building permit fees for the Potpourri group. That was not budgeted at the time that we set the operating budget for 15.
So that's $200,000 of building permit fee.
So again, that will help augment the free cash calculation for the end of this fiscal year. Other revenues are generally tracking on target or slightly ahead. Expenditures are on target. I am closely monitoring the Park and Rec budget, just to make sure that they don't overexpend for this fiscal year, because it's their first year.
Yeah, they drained that revolving fund, right?
Right,
For the
right.
Enterprise
So,
fund?
um,
Yeah.
I did meet with the Fred and Ivan a few times to go through the fiscal
They
16
don't
budget.
have a new director yet, though, right?
No,
No.
no.
And they're gonna
When's that
come.
gonna happen?
Well,
They're
they
coming here to our
they don't
next
have
meeting.
permission to fill it yet, that they are revising the job description right now. It will be reclassified by the Personnel Board and then only then brought to the selectmen under the staffing vacancy review policy for permission to fill the vacancy. But it's our understanding that do you have the job description yet?
I've seen a draft.
Yeah, okay, so they're working on it, Park and Rec is working on it.
And they will be coming to our next meeting also, just to bring those.
Great.
So for fiscal 2016, we are in budget, we're balanced. I have $1,500 remaining. This is in balance with the school appropriation at the $17,250,000 that we had discussed. They are going to be using their circuit breaker funds in full. It's at the $700,000 level, and just shy of $400,000 in school choice funds, which is about what they'll be receiving in revenue for that fiscal year. That will leave them with somewhere in the neighborhood of $550,000 to $600,000 in circuit breaker funds at the end of next year, just as a hedge against any other expenditures. Plus, they'll have the circuit breaker money that's coming in for that fiscal year in case there's another problem. So I think that the level of reserves will be somewhere over $1 million.
So, yeah, so,
I think it's a good, it's a good process. And I do appreciate the fact that we did get the budget figures from the school in February, and that helped a lot in closing the gap.
now, next year's school contract has 2%, another 2%,
One.
another 1?
Is it 3, 1, and 2?
3, 1, and 2.
3, 1,
2.
okay,
two.
so we're in the
This
3.
is- this year's
This is
three.
the 3.
Next
and
year's
then this is
1.
the 1, okay. Okay,
And I'm glad you brought that up.
so we should look for less of an increase next year for
Salary.
salaries. It'll be an increase.
16
because
is the
one.
one.
16 is the
Yeah,
one.
so 17 be the 2 then, right?
Yeah.
So
The
17
year
would
we're
be
in
an
right
increase.
now, that
15 is the 3.
fiscal 15 is the
15
3%.
16 is the 1.
Right.
Right.
So next year is twice as much.
That's what you're seeing in the
Well, the
budget.
following, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the
The
following year,
the
yeah.
budget
Next
we'll be
year.
reviewing a year from now.
Right.
Right,
Yeah, so
We'll
17.
have
Fiscal
2%.
17.
Yeah, yeah, which,
Yeah.
so it'll be higher, right?
okay. So the 450 that Mike was talking about this year,
It'll be higher.
should be close to twice that.
You would, well, yeah, you would, yes.
1%, 2%, I mean,
Yeah.
Well, it factors steps into that too, so it depends on where the teachers are
A
within
lot
that.
a lot of the
Well,
teachers
steps.
are maxed out.
Right.
Right,
When
so
they
they-
started the contract, 50% of the teachers were at the top step already.
And one of the big factors that was in this year's budget was the lane changes. So as people got advanced degree programs or additional credits, they bumped up to a different lane.
well, that's not going to change.
Right, but that's,
But the impact
that's
is one
part of
time,
that
right?
Yeah, those are the
450.
biggest,
That's-
right, those are the
right.
biggest charges, but I wonder what their time deadline is on that for budgeting purposes, as far as changing lanes. I know school district I work for, it's by February 1st, so that you know for the next budgeting season what to anticipate. It's not, as you're budgeting, well, we've got these people moving around, we don't, you set the deadline before you start preparing for your budget, so you know ahead of time. You lock them in. If you're gonna change lanes, you gotta apply by January, whatever, and, you force them to, submit, so that you have time to prepare your budget and understand, estimate what you're gonna have to pay for lanes. Do they have that?
I don't know. I know they do for retirements and those types of issues, but I don't know about the lane changes. I'd have to look at the contract.
I mean, especially if they're moving their time frame up to October 31st, they gotta start putting some more deadlines in of when to submit a request to swap a lane.
If there is some language like that, I'm sure it's in the teacher's contract.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Okay.
So there are no new staffing increases in the fiscal 2016 operating budget on the town side. There's no additional FTEs, there's no additional hours, there's no new programs. I know that there were requests for that in the mission budgets, but at this level, we're just maintaining the existing staffing that we have. All steps have been factored into it. Just trying to think what else has changed. There was a large reduction in debt service, but again, that was a one-time adjustment. We moved it to capital, and there's a portion of that is being appropriated to the capital
Yeah,
stabilization.
short-term debt,
fund.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
short-term interest. So I don't know.
A big chunk of that was eaten up by
Yeah, they took the 70 of it.
Oh, they
the
took
70 grand to the schools,
And then 100,000
and then
from
100 to the
master planning.
master plan.
Yep.
And why would we do that?
Which,
Why would we put 100,000 earmarked for the master plan? Why wouldn't we just put it in the reserve fund, and when somebody decided we were actually going to do a master plan and have it scoped out, just come to town meeting with a request for the master plan funds, like any other capital?
Keith will tell you, we've already got the committee is launched and ready to go.
Well, if we hadn't already had town meeting make two appropriations, first for 100,000 and then for another 13,000, I'd say, yeah, that's probably what we should do, but we've already got a running start on the project, and there's the recognition
And
that,
we have agreement on how we're going to go about it? I thought there were two sort of schools of thought. One is through basically the municipal route, and the other was going a private route. I mean, do we have agreement on that or not, or?
there's the desire to appropriate additional money in order to not eclipse any option.
So that says no. Okay.
I mean, I specifically brought a proposal forward for where the project could be done for $113,000 by MAPC, and that was not entertained.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the desire was to go, notwithstanding the fact that we could get it done for $113,000, the decision was made to go and ask the voters for another $100,000.
Well, get something done, but I mean, the master plan committee hasn't sat yet, but the selectmen made that decision. I mean, I spoke to it, and it's consistent with what we've been saying for a year or two, is that the towns that have been doing it have been spending about $250,000, and that's, $200,000, $250,000.
Yeah, if you hire a private consultant.
Right,
cost you that.
and as much
If
as
you-
I'm not in favor of what you're proposing, I think
Yeah.
you still get another chance to make that case, and if you
Right.
do, town gets
Yeah,
money back.
and I agree
But
with
that's
that
not the
totally.
expected outcome
Right,
at this
that,
point.
that the one, and I'd say the area of agreement there, the commonality is that the important thing is to proceed with the master plan and have the master plan be undertaken by the community as the community decides. And by going for additional money, we don't eclipse any option. We don't eclipse the option of having a private consultant do it. You don't eclipse any option of doing it, of having it done another way with, an intermunicipal agreement. But what you do have is moving forward with the project.
But practically speaking, once we have the money, isn't the, isn't the the whole card turned over?
Well,
I mean, it seems to me that it's fait accompli at that point.
Well, that has not been the experience with other communities, that it would involve a competitive procurement
Okay.
issued by the town. The only thing that short circuits the competitive procurement is if you only decide you want to have another public agency do it, in which case you can enter into an interagency agreement. That option is what Boxborough decided to do when they're having their master plan done for $75,000, augmented by some grants from MAPC. Acton paid $250,000 to have theirs
Right.
done by a private consultant. And, you know, I think the answer for what it's ultimately going to cost Littleton is somewhere between those two numbers, and it depends on what the scope of
Right.
services is, and that emphatically has not been decided
Right.
by anyone, because the committee is just being formed. The process of deciding what you want to do in the scope is critical. I mean, that's as important part of the process as anything, is having, and the master plan steering committee has been established, it's being populated, we hopefully will be able to have it meet in the next few weeks, and get going on the scope. But that's a critical part of the whole process, is to determine what needs to be done in updating the master plan. And the more time you spend on that, the better the project will be at the end. So going after the money preserves the options for the town to do it the way the town wants to do it.
Okay, on the annual report, do you have the deadline for when we have to have that?
I was gonna-
3 weeks from tonight.
It's pretty quick.
You should have said 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, well, it's, I published the date for so long, April 14th, and that remains
We're talking
unchanged.
about a document that is, the same document goes into the report and at least this way we've done it the past year or so, right? And to the one that's distributed to town meeting,
It goes in the booklet here.
Yeah.
Right.
When
Yeah.
we slim down to a couple pages.
right?
Yeah.
But also,
Well, it's however many pages you want.
just don't, you know, there
to
are
put
two
in there.
deadlines here, right? There's the print deadline for the annual town report, and there's the deadline for, you know, the town meeting report.
Well, it's the same deadline. But, well,
It is,
I mean,
okay. Well,
there
as
is a town report, yes, which would have reports from any department that, or board that submits it by our deadline, and but that's not the detailed report that the voters see in this booklet.
Mike, I just wanna
Last year, I
show-
think it was about 6
we-
pages, in prior years it was 10 or...
Yep, we cut it down to meet the four, I think that's all worked well.
You can have as many, this is just a placeholder, if you need 10 pages, we can put them in.
I think we missed out one year in getting in the town report, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked a question on deadline. You're saying they're the same deadline, Keith, for both? Print deadline, or roughly?
I think the
Warrant.
town report's probably going to go to the printer before then.
Okay, well, then we probably need to.
Yeah, we have to check with
But the more,
So the plan is Paul and I are going to work on that in the next couple of weeks, and then we bring it to our next meeting here.
Yeah.
Are there any specific topics or things that people here want to make sure we include, or?
I'm going to recirculate last year's report so you can see the format,
Right.
especially since there's some new faces.
Yeah, Paul's going to, PowerPoint to send for
Is
us.
that we can provide input.
Okay.
I just, if we're closing in on deadlines, appreciate if Bonnie or Keith, somebody remind Betsy and I, so
Yep.
we can make sure we don't miss them.
I'll ask Jen tomorrow
Right.
what the deadline is for the town report, the book.
Right.
All right, and then we can
yeah, I
talk
think
next week.
that the deadline we gave people was a month ago
Right,
for
for
the
the
town
town
report.
meeting, yeah.
Okay,
What the real deadline is sort of a secret, but...
we'll try to beat that anyway.
But it's an absolute deadline of April 4, whatever we have on April 14th is what the printer gets for the town meeting booklet.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We have another meeting before then, so that's the main thing for us. And then based on that, we can go through the cable show stuff too. I assume we still want to do that again, and we can record that on the 21st. That would still, if people want to do it.
Slideshow is key to that too. It's a lot more interesting than watching us. but,
Right.
Sure. I can update.
So that'll be 2 meetings away from now?
Yes.
Okay.
You have last year's draft, Bonnie, and we can work off of that too.
Yep, I can send that out.
I'm sorry,
The slideshow,
the slideshow?
yeah.
For the,
Well,
TV show.
we kind of give two versions of it, at least that's what we did. Remember, we do one,
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
TV show, and then we do a
We did
whittled down version of the
slideshow
town
with
meeting, which will be
audio.
Betsy's presentation.
Yeah.
And I guess you're the only new face at the table, Steve, for this, but what we did before was we just kind of each take a piece of it and read it for the camera so everybody gets their star turn, you know?
okay.
Yeah. That was novel the first couple of times we did it, but it got really old.
You got old? You don't want to do it?
I don't want to do it.
Okay, well, I don't care either, we'll let Betsy do both of them. Well, whatever, we can discuss
Yeah,
that.
we can discuss it next week.
And the only other thing that I'm doing is I am spending quite a bit of time this week in trying to get the financial documents into a CAFR format, or the Consolidated Comprehensive Annual Financial Report format that a lot of the larger communities use, like.
Yeah, I've seen those, like, yeah,
Brookline
Andover,
and-
right?
Yeah.
Andover's got a very extensive one.
Yeah, it's a huge document, but if you look at some of the other communities that have them, they're pretty easy to navigate, and they're really interesting. I mean, I'm an accountant, but it's interesting for me to read it. So I'm trying to do all that now. I think once I get the format down, it'll be easy to maintain going forward. It's just creating the format in the first year. So I'm doing it for this fiscal 16 budget, so I'm hoping that I'll have that in the next week or two as
Any
a
way to
draft.
integrate the schools into that, or have you had a conversation with Steve Mark about them using it too, or does it matter?
Most of the communities that I looked at have a small section for the schools, and it deals with, what their population, their buildings, and some summary information, but it's
Just in
not.
case of you entering data they give you, that sort of thing?
Right.
Yeah.
It's more of a presentation on the town side.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as what the deadlines are for the documents, I mean, I've looked back at the last two annual town reports, there was no report of the finance committee in either of those. So the only deadline you have is the April
Well,
14th
just-
deadline.
I think with the report we put in there's no harm in having the report we put in the town meeting report going back in the town report where it used to be many years. We may not have made the last two books, but that doesn't mean it's
Well,
right.
I think that we made the split several years ago because the town report used to contain the warrant.
Yeah, I don't know that it
And
was
we
a
took it
conscious
at-
decision not to.
And it was a conscious policy decision to create two separate documents. Because the one separate document then became, which is this, that we have the draft
Financial
now,
report.
is the voter document that gets mailed out to everybody. The town report, we print 200 copies.
That's
of
it?
And
And you just pick it up at,
you pick it up if you
That's
want
it?
it, it's available electronically, but the one that we make, 3,000 copies of and mail out to each
I can
household.
remember, yeah, I can remember years back actually
Yeah.
getting the town.
Yeah,
report.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
doing everybody,
Yeah.
sure.
That we made,
Yeah.
that was a conscious policy decision to
Yeah.
to pull all the town meeting pieces, all of the current town meeting pieces out of that town report and create the separate document. And that's the one that you've been working on.
I think there was some confusion too in that the report that you're preparing now is for the 16 operating budget, and the town report is for 2014.
Right, and we used to
So
do
it was-
both.
it was
I mean,
kinda like-
Before a report for town meeting existed, there was a town annual report, which was done on the calendar year,
Mm-hmm.
not on the fiscal year. It covered, obviously, financial topics, but it wasn't exclusive to the budget recommendations, which is essentially what,
Yeah. I mean, if
town
the
report.
finance committee wants to put a general report in, and they run about a page long, in the annual report, you've been doing a lot of, been very busy, done a lot of things, it's an opportunity to record that stuff in the annual town report. You're welcome to submit something.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the conscious decision had been made is to split out all of the work that you're doing for this town meeting into a document which identified itself as the town meeting document. So,
And the town report itself is history.
yeah. and-
Going that way, anyway.
Okay.
Well, I don't think they harm in the short
Right.
version.
Yeah, you're welcome to give us a
Well, but it
short
wouldn't be
version.
budget number, it wouldn't be numbers and
No,
things like that, it
no.
would be other things,
The rest of it,
policies and
yeah.
things like that, yeah. Okay.
So I've given
Um,
you the warrant too to take a look through. I don't know if you want to walk through it tonight, or if you want to do that at your next meeting, or,
I would like to start it tonight, because I'm afraid the next meeting, we got a couple people coming in, and who knows what's gonna happen, so if people don't mind, we can stay till 9 o'clock and get done what we can get done between now and then.
Yeah. And what you have is not just the warrant, you have the town meeting booklet, which contains the articles the motions and the explanations.
Okay?
Board of Selectmen have voted last night to support all of the articles except for 2 that are bylaws that are pending. So they, in essence, they voted to support all of the financial articles that are in the 2 warrants.
Okay.
Okay, so you want me to start with the
All
special?
right, let's just start, and for the ones that are financial, we can, if we feel like we're in a position, we want to recommend it, that's great. If we don't,
Article 1
pass till next week.
is a bill of prior year. We don't have any bills of prior year right now, so
Okay.
I'm not anticipating any action on that. Article 2 are line item transfers. And so these are just operating transfers within the fiscal 2015 budget. We have our frequent flyer at legal expense for $63,000, which would put it at $238 for the year. Last year, I think we spent $263, and the year before that was $283. I think $238 should be good based on where we're at. I'm hoping that it stays there. We did correct this in the 2016 budget. It's budgeted at $250, so. Yep.
Okay, good.
Stormwater and wastewater, this is just, it's an ongoing cost that needs to be increased. We did address this also in the 2016 budget, but we need an increase of $10,000 just to manage the DEP regulations around stormwater and the wastewater management for the high school treatment facility. Let's see. SANS program, this is I think it's See a New Sun.
Yeah, the mental health
Yes.
resource.
So this is the actual assessment, this is previously it was subsidized by some grant funding, but this is the first year that the town has to fund the full impact, and it's $12,000 annually, so. They had previously told us $5,000, but they had the wrong fiscal year, their year ran from January to December, so they had the wrong
So is
cost.
this out of the Health and Human Services Department? Is that
It's
where
an
this is, or
assessment
separate?
out of Health and Human Services line items,
Okay.
but it's a direct assessment paid to the vendor. General insurance is running okay this year. Next year it won't, but we've had some claims this year that will hit me next year in an increase in premium. So I can reduce the budget by $10,000 to fund some of these other items. And then unemployment expense is running under budget, so we have $50,000 there that we can allocate to these other expenses. And then the Minuteman Tech, that student dropped off this fiscal year, so we saved $20,000 in that expense also. So there's no net increase to operating budgets, it's just shifting it around in between.
In legal last year, we had to take money from our special fund. We're not doing that this year. You have other places
I
to get
haven't
it.
yet, yeah, so we've been,
We don't have any kids at Minutemen now, right? We had
With
2 at
one.
one point. We have 1?
One.
Oh, okay.
we'd budgeted for 2 this year because they had said I would have 2, but I don't know.
Unless there's any other questions, I'll make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend Article 2 of the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great, thank you.
Snow and ice, this is the article that I alluded to earlier. I'm sure that I will have an amount in there. It's probably going to be somewhere in excess of $25,000 to come from the undesignated fund balance. But I'll fine tune that number as we get closer to town meeting.
Oh, obviously, if there's any change to Article 2, you'll bring back any change between, could there be at this point any additional ones?
There is no sum of money referenced in here.
No, for Article 2.
Article 2,
He's
Oh,
back
I'm
on
sorry.
2.
No, there won't be any changes for Article 2.
Okay,
That's it.
fine.
If there's anything else that pops up, they'd have to come through reserve
Okay.
to ask for that.
So for 3, we would wait to vote on that until we have a real number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Article 4 is at the request of the PMBC to shift some of the money from their plan last year, or for this fiscal year, to move monies from the middle school and Russell Street into Shaker Lane, primarily to deal with pavement management projects.
Straightforward, Steve?
So, just a few items, yeah.
Okay. Support Article 4 as written.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good.
Article 5 was at the request of the water department to move some funds that they had put into their budgeted surplus account, the 160. They need to move that into operating expenses and capital outlay. Again, it was budgeted, it wasn't programmed to be expended, they're now looking to expend that, so.
So how is it a budgeted surplus? They just bring in more than they expect to spend?
Right, and in order to kind of preserve the ability to appropriate it, you have to put it in a budgeted surplus line so that it's raised and appropriated somewhere, and then you can transfer it out if you actually have a funding source, a expense for it.
Okay.
Now, is these numbers likely to change after tonight's meeting with his board, or?
I think it's unlikely. We've been through the numbers like 3 times with him.
Okay.
So
If we're gonna meet with him.
Yeah,
would
I mean,
wait
I don't
vote
think
on
you
this.
need to
I
make a
would wait
recommendation.
because-
Yeah, you could wait on Article 5
Yeah.
and 6 for that matter, because the 6 is a new project of borrowing, Article 700,000 for CEO water tank. And if you're going to have the water department in at your next
Yep.
meeting.
Yep.
you can-
Roadway improvement on Article 7, this is to secure the final piece of borrowing authorization to do the next road at New Estate. We will have to kind of revisit the plan after we get bids in for that, but I do need the $1 million authorization in order to secure a contract with the estimates that we have now. This will be paid inside the levy limit. It's budgeted, it is planned inside the levy, and it is in the debt service budget going out in the next 5 years, so.
As long as bids come in as expected,
This has been
right?
a real good program.
Yeah, our engineers have been really good. Green International, they've done a really good job. They're typically a little above what they come in at, so
Obviously, yeah,
if
right.
they're saying 2.9, it's probably 2.8 and change.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion on that one?
So moved.
Okay.
Second?
Second?
I'm gonna abstain, so I'm not gonna vote on it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
Duly noted.
Article 8 is, I'll let Keith go through this one.
Sure. This is part 2 of the blended Community Preservation Act articles. As you know from our discussion at November town meeting, because Littleton has accepted the blended Community Preservation Act, and as you know, because you just approved the policy, that we are allowed to add, in addition to the 1% surcharge we raise, we're allowed to add the equivalent of another 2% as a maximum, for which we can get state matching funds. It's all about putting money into the CPA fund in order to attract the state matching funds. The upper limit of what we can put in is for this year is $454,900 in municipal funds. We can put that into the CPA fund. We've already put 200,000 in at the fall town meeting. We put that into the recreation bucket of CPA. This article proposes to appropriate the remainder that we're allowed to do, which is $254,900, which is proposed to go into 3 other buckets. First is housing, for which we're proposing to take $46,000 and change from a revenue source that is specifically for housing. That there are mitigation funds we receive from the Reed Meadow developer under an agreement that was signed off by the planning board and the selectmen. Ultimately, we'll get $92,000 from that source. We have $46,000 in hand right now, which is equivalent of 7% of the sales price of 2 duplex units. we'll get a similar amount later, and when we get it, we can put it in too. But the thought was that since housing is a CPA purpose, and since if you take the dedicated housing funds and put it in the CPA fund, you'll get state matching funds, why not? That's the first part. Second part is open space funds. We're proposing to take the balance of $143,000 that we have from cell tower, unallocated cell tower revenues that town meeting has previously voted to be used only for open space projects. Okay, again, here's an open space bucket to move it into, and so doing qualifies us for state matching funds. So
I understand
Yeah.
basically the open space to the open space. Do you expect any issue, or have you discussed it with the open space folks that lobbied for, the conservation land and open space and all that? And is there any concern with that group, the money going into the CPA bucket? I just, I can just see us getting to town meeting,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
somebody have a bee up their bonnet. and-
There's no saying that some bee won't fly in if we leave the door open, but we've had discussions, pretty candid discussions with the folks who care about this issue,
Okay,
which
great.
includes all the, folks who pay attention to what the Community Preservation Committee is doing. And the idea is that we're moving the money specifically into the open space reserve. We're not putting it in a generic CPA fund, we're specifically putting it in the open space bucket. And the reason is to attract the additional state matching funds,
And the
which people
matching
get.
funds would go into those buckets in the same percentage.
The matching funds go in as by statutory formula, which Bonnie can describe. When she gets the matching funds, it is prescribed that she put 10% each into
Okay, so
open
it-
space.
So it is this
In the
percentage
same formula,
breakdown.
10, 10, 10, 70 is the
Yeah.
formula. However, in our CPA policy that we jointly adopted with this committee, the selectmen and the Community Preservation Committee, we've agreed that we're annually going to talk about where we want those matching funds to
70%
go.
is good. Okay.
And if we need to move them around by having town meeting vote to take them out of this bucket and put it in that one, typically to take it out of undesignated
Right.
and move it into specific ones, we've agreed we will annually look at that and make a decision about it. So it's good.
But that takes town meeting vote.
It would take a town meeting vote to move it,
Okay.
other than the statutory formula, 10,
Yep.
10, 10, 70.
Good.
Do you expect any change in these numbers, Keith, between
No.
now and town?
No.
I'll
No.
tell you what, worth noting, compare where we were a year ago to where we are now on this topic. If you want a reminder of progress we've made, I appreciate the cooperation of the CPC committee in working with us a lot more this year, and a lot of the detail work and creative work has been Keith's, and he's due credit too for that. And just the simple fact that these numbers, this isn't the first time we've seen any of this, maybe it's been fine-tuned, this is probably the third or fourth time we've
Right,
seen
that's
this in
right,
some form,
yeah.
and that's just,
Right. And it was great that we had agreement, we've got total agreement between the three committees about what we should be doing. The third bucket is the remainder, once I took the identifiable funding sources, and who had 46 for housing, who had 143 for open space, then we had still another 65,000 to reach the maximum of what we could do to
Right.
3%. My initial proposal was to split it between historic and undesignated. And actually, at a robust discussion at the Community Preservation Committee, we looked at what the ending balances would be in each of the buckets, and historic was not able to hold its head as high as the others.
Right.
Significant amounts going in the other buckets, so the agreement was reached that the remainder, 65,000, should go to historic, because they hadn't gotten a supplemental.
share, right.
So,
Okay.
so they were all set with that. The source of that 65,000 is the 15 Great Road mitigation money. which is undesignated. It doesn't say what it's to be used for. Just a reminder, we're expecting a total of $814,000 in mitigation funds from 15 Great Road. Thus far, we've spent $200,000 of that earmarked for recreation. In cash, I think we've got, we had received $350, we'd received $250 as a payment, $100 for recreation, and I think we got another 20-something in from the sales.
One sale, it was around 30,000.
Yeah, so we will be seeing additional money come in as the project, as the units, or the qualifying units are sold, and we get a percentage of
All
the,
the better that we have this policy so that, manage all those money, you know. Yep.
Move we recommend approval to Article 8, Community Preservation
Second?
Act
Recommend.
Fund.
Approval is recommend, right?
Right.
Vote to recommend, yeah.
Yep.
Stay here a second?
Yeah, Alan?
Yes, okay. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great.
the annual Article 3 is the first financial article, and this is the same list of revolving funds that was approved last year as amended. That is, you might recall in November, we increased the dog by law enforcement from $5,000 to $12,000 in order to pay for a $12,000, that is the $1,000 a month service agreement that Littleton has with Boxborough for our animal
Animal
control.
And that's working well?
Yes.
Yeah, and
So it
everybody
must be.
complaints.
Move FinCom recommend Article 3 of the annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So Article 4 is the operating budget, as agreed to with the school department appropriation at $17,250,000. All other items have not changed really since December. The operating budget?
Hate to jinx us, but do you think we're fine on this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very comfortable.
Grab it. School committee's okay with it, selectmen are okay with it.
It's a good process this year, and since you run it, then, you know, all kudos to you. Bonnie, Keith, Steve, everyone.
Bonnie gave us the blueprint of how to get to a balanced budget, and we just stuck with it, so thanks to Bonnie.
Further
Okay.
discussion, I'll move a recommendation of Article 4, unless there's any.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right on. Should go so fast at town meeting, huh?
No, it has the past couple of years.
Last year did.
Don't you?
So let's see, water, you're going to have it at the next
Right.
meeting. You're
Yep.
going to have Park and Rec in at a
Next
future
meeting.
meeting
Yep.
too. So
Yep.
that brings us to the capital plan, Article 7.
Okay.
The only change in the capital plan article was the addition of the $70,000 in the school department requests for textbooks, resource materials, and training. Not staff training, not
What
to
kind of
pay
training?
teachers' salaries to be trained.
Professional development training?
It's to have
For engaging
a vendor
services.
come in and train the
Teach
people
them how to
for
read
the
books.
Train them how to what?
resource materials. So it's electronic resource materials also. So there's training associated with getting the,
So it's outside vendors coming in,
Outside
teaching you how to
vendors.
run their
Yes.
software and that kind of stuff.
yes.
Right, and to close a $205,000 budget gap, which was what separated our number from the schools, they agreed to $70,000. Going once?
Yep. Yeah.
You're right.
Sold.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the 130, right.
Other than that, it's the same list we've been looking at.
It is,
Yeah, and
yes.
it added the 100,000
Oh,
for
yeah.
master plan, which
Right.
your committee had
And
recommended
and
last
they
week.
got 30,000 grant, right?
Who?
The schools did, for the books.
What?
They got trust funds.
Trust fund,
Trust
yeah.
fund, I'm sorry, trust fund.
Yeah, the annual trust funds, which was up, what, about maybe $7,000 or $8,000, I think, from what their normal, from what their
Right, I think it was
average
20.
annual
So that
infusion
whole
is.
book and whatever program, the 70 from the town, the 30 from the trust fund, took over half, or about half of their quote shortfall.
Right.
And they're covering the other, so, okay.
No borrowing. This is all done inside the levy with available funds between retired debt service that's been accumulated or undesignated fund balance.
You still on Article 7? or-
Yes.
Mhm,
Yes.
Yeah, Article 7.
I'll move recommendation of Article 7.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Okay.
Article 8 is the Community Preservation Committee budget, which I think is also a cause for kudos to CPC, who heard the concerns that have been raised in the past about spending all the money that was there in balances, and they are only undertaking $26,000 in new spending this year. The rest is going to reserves. There's, in fact, at the end of the day, 67,000 is going into undesignated reserves. The projected revenues for next year are $222,000. 10% of that number must go into each of the three buckets: housing, open space, historic. And that's a starting point. Then we look at what debt service is associated for projects that have already been approved, and which buckets do you pay those from. So for open space acquisitions, they're paid from first the open space bucket and then undesignated, so that we have the debt service payments totaling $104,000. Then there's the debt on the Houghton roof, which is $15,000, and then there are two new projects, $8,000 for the Houghton building, UV radiation window protection, and $18,000 for Housing Authority heating systems, which would be enough to do 2 units at Pine Tree Park. So comparatively, 2 very modest projects. There were others that were requested. There was $300,000 that the Historical Commission was looking for to proceed with the Long Store project. The Selectmen's thought on that was projects like that need to wait until we've developed the long-term plan for CPA funds. Let's have the discussion first of what our long-term goals are, and then step back and see who's asking for what money. So it's a very modest group of, set of recommendations they're bringing forward this year.
I will
Are we voting motion?
move recommendation of, what is that, Article 8.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, you guys want, it's 9 o'clock, you want to keep going, you want to stop it for tonight?
I can probably go on.
Okay,
Not a whole lot
No,
left,
there's
really.
there's only about 5 new
all
articles.
right, great,
to
let's go, let's do it.
We can't do anything with 9.
Yeah, Article 9, as soon as we reach settlement with the unions, we will ask for funding. In all likelihood, this will be something that comes up right before town meeting, so, but we're working hard on it.
Okay,
Article 10 does 2 things. It amends the personnel bylaw and the salary schedules, and it also appropriates funds for non-union wages. So with respect to the salary schedule, Schedule A, which is for permanent full and part-time positions, it has not been amended in 3 years. What was approved in November 2012 for fiscal 2013 was to stay in place for for 3 years. And so next year is the year following. Fiscal 2016 will be the first time that it's up for amendment. We are mindful that there was over on the school side, that there was a contract that was worth 6% over 3 years, and that's averages out to 2, 2, and 2. Not going to get into the specifics of what we're doing with collective bargaining in a public setting, but suffice it to say that the proposal here to amend the non-union bylaw by 2% will surprise no one. That it's been fairly common knowledge that that's been our rule of thumb. We did want to go forward, though, and not hold up the bylaw employees, which has happened sometime in the past. I mean, sometimes we've said we'll bring the contracts forward. If it didn't look like we were going to have contracts ready for May, that we didn't bring the salary schedule for the non-union forward until November. We have a really good chance of being able to reach agreement with I hope, all of our unions by May. There's no reason to not proceed with the number that we know we should do for this salary schedule. That the cost of implementing it has been in Bonnie's numbers all along, and we have the funds. It's part of the spending plan. The other thing that's in here, the Park and Rec redid their salary schedules in a very thoughtful approach. They redid all the job descriptions, graded and rated them. I think it will be defensible on town meeting. A couple of years ago, there was a misstep, and we weren't quite able to explain what was going on. We've got better command of that now. The net result is keeping the costs lower, too. It's a realistic, it addresses the concern that Park and Rec said to us, that through our inaction, we were saddling them with higher salary expenses than they were anticipating.
So-
This allows them to control it.
So this was done like in the last month or so?
This was done in the last 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Kate did it
Oh, 4 or
before she
5
Kate
left.
did it before she
Good work
Yeah.
on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And there were other, language changes in there. We had, just for your information, where you've been so supportive of the effort a few years ago, we did a major rewrite of the sick leave and going from unlimited to limited sick leave. We agreed to reassemble the affected employee groups prior to the next round of bargaining and see how that went, and see if there was any tweaking that was necessary. We had convened a sick leave advisory committee last September. It met for a number of months, produced a series of reports which have found their way to the bargaining table with each of the unions and found its way to the Personnel Board in the amendments that we're bringing forward here to sort of tweak them and fine tune them, make it a fairer system. And so it deals with some inequities that, like a new hire inadvertently has a higher benefit than an existing employee, and just some unintended.
Well, we had 2 years under our belts to see what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah,
so.
that's good. That's great you set it up that way. I didn't know you had to do that review again. That's very smart. Anything else you want to say? Because you're part of this committee, right?
Covered it all.
Are you expecting, should we be, FinCom recommendations?
Yeah, because it's 58.
Because it's
It's an
50,
appropriation.
Yeah, we're making an
2%
appropriation.
increase in Schedule A.
Yeah.
So moved to recommend approval.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving right along. This is no fun. Gotta be something controversial here, huh?
And then
You're gonna regret saying it.
Yeah, I know.
the 2 stabilization fund articles. The stabilization fund per se, in order to reach our target of 5% of the operating budget, we need to add 39,000 and change, which will give us a balance of 1.8 million.
Move Article 11 is written.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So this is basically doing what the policy says. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
This is actually making it happen. Okay.
Sort of like ISO, you write down what you're gonna do, and then they come in and see if you do it, that's all.
Okay.
The next article, capital stabilization, does even more than what the policy says, that the policy itself would say we need to, that the amount that goes in needs to be equal to at least 1% of the general fund capital plan. By my calculation, we're putting in 1.7 million to the capital plan, so we would otherwise put 17,000 in. In this article, we're proposing to put $180,000 in, which will bring the balance to $391,000.
We were a little short last year, right? So this kind of makes up for it?
No,
No?
we put the
We've been
minimum
putting
one,
in,
just
yeah,
the
we lived up to
minimum.
the policy just by bare minimum last
Yeah.
year.
We put the 1% in just to make sure we had to address it every year.
Right.
Right.
I think we had put 190 something in year one, and then
Right.
enough to get us up to 211
Okay.
last year.
Okay, the second year
Yeah.
was smaller, but it still met the,
There was
It
still
met the-
something.
It
Met
met
the
the
requirement.
1%, but
Now we're doing it with a vengeance.
right.
Well, we had that one-time money, so.
Yep.
Move to accept Article 12.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those passed. Amended?
13, Article 13 is the school trust fund that we were just talking about. This year it totals $31,900 and is proposed for the 3 projects listed in the article.
You might remember some of these amounts, the 400, the 5,000, 800, used to be in the operating budget.
Yeah.
But the trust fund commissioners prefer to have it be used for targeted type of expenditures like this.
That's good, yeah, because those little amounts used to always drag out the end of the budget.
Doesn't make any,
One more thing. Yeah.
Recommend acceptance of Article 13.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Article 14 is a combined article this year. It's since we have 2 work-off abatement programs for senior citizens and veterans. And here's where we ask the assessors to commit portions of the overlay account for those programs. Interesting to see that we have 101 participants in the senior citizen program and 18 in the veterans program. So,
Have we resolved the dilemma, or was it ever considered a dilemma, that you could actually participate in both those programs if you were an over 60-year-old veteran?
yeah, I mean, that's the way it's set up. They can participate in both.
No,
Oh, did that change?
I don't know, but my Dick could only do either the veterans or the senior. He couldn't
I'll
do
have to check
both.
with Ann on that. I think, I thought
That's
you
what
could
he
do,
was told when he signed up last year.
well, let me check. My understanding is that you could do both,
That's what I thought it was too.
yeah.
Through the
Maybe he was told incorrectly, but I was told both.
Okay.
In any event.
Move to accept Article 14 as written.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 14 is recommended. 15?
Article 15, we don't have a number to plug in yet. The state typically releases the main Chapter 90 number on April 1st, so we will know
Okay.
that soon. Article 16 is a financial article. It rescinds unused borrowing authorization. It's a big number, $9 million, which we will take off the books, which is good, and it will bring us down to just $5.1 million in unissued debt,
How come we haven't done this in the past?
because we wait for the projects to
Wait
be
for the projects
completed.
Some of these go back to 2007, it was just because, what happened?
Well, the authorizing vote does, but you have to
Yeah,
wait
they
till the
just-
project's
Project might
closed
not have
out.
been finished.
Project was doing
We do
that
this
now.
every year. We have a list like this every year, don't we? No,
Like
not
every
year?
other one.
Every other
I know,
year.
I know I've seen it before,
Not
but
this big.
not this
Yeah.
big.
Well,
right.
that's
Well,
that
you
one
get one
Russell
item.
Street School.
Yeah,
was
Russell
the-
Street was the main one, and
That was the
you
major
recall, at
player.
the start of the project, we thought, ultimately, the first time, the article for Russell Street was 15 million, and by the time we got to town meeting itself, we were down to 13.4 as the borrowing authorization because you have to do the whole amount, and then you get your MSBA
Right.
reimbursement, that's a net figure, but,
Again,
and then they were the cost project, cost savings that resulted from that project as well, so.
There's also the issue that some of this debt was paid inside the levy limit without going, we didn't place it permanently. So for
the
Russell Street,
track.
there was in the track, but a piece of Russell Street, there were, I don't know, 400,000 or 500,000 of Russell Street debt that we paid inside the levy.
engineering costs, right?
You have to have the
The state gave us the money
authorization
right
in
up
order to
front.
do the ban every year. So until we paid that down to zero, you can't rescind the total borrowing.
That's
So that's
the extra money
done
that
now.
you're putting into the capital
Yeah, right, the
stabilization.
short-term borrowing, right.
That's what it
Where
is,
came
it's
from.
Russell Street, the
Just the
track,
stuff falling through.
and the
Yeah.
septic system.
Right.
Okay.
Is being paid off next month. And that's it.
Move that we support Article 16 as written.
Second.
Those in favor?
All right.
All right.
Opposed? Okay, great.
Let's see. I don't think that you adopt recommendations. Well, you have adopted recommendations in the past, I think, on the compensating balance. That's this year, Article 21.
20, what is it?
20, 21, and 22
Yeah.
are routine articles, which we typically have a,
I'll move we recommend Article 20, the borrowing authorization. Second.
Those in favor? Opposed?
Move we recommend Article 21, the compensating balance agreement.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Move we recommend Article 22, the FY 216 personal exemption amounts.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Beautiful.
Okay,
and
Not
that's
bad,
it.
huh?
So it's just a couple that we need to.
Yep, so you've just got two,
Park and Rec and the Water Department.
and there
Got
was
six
something we wait
articles.
for money for
yeah,
someplace
total
else.
6 articles outstanding.
Try to explain this article.
Snow.
They keep throwing around creation of new nonconformity, which new nonconformity shall require issuance, but not nonconformity. But if you do a new nonconformity, you can't go back to being
Take
nonconformity.
your word for it, Al.
Give it a rest.
Well, I'll circulate the old report, and Betsy, maybe you can get the copy and something. like that.
Yeah, we should, yeah, let's do that.
Move
We
adjournment.
probably have minutes, but I don't remember where we are on that, do you?
Yes,
Yeah, we did.
You sent them out.
I sent them out, and Fred sent a note back and told me that they look perfect to him.
Okay, they're
And-
good, perfect for Fred.
And I recommend
Good.
approval of those minutes.
Okay.
High praise.
What-
Second.
What were the minutes, March
What's
something
the
here?
date?
17.
I will
No,
tell
it's
you,
not
Oh,
there.
I
I'm
have a copy of them with me. March 3rd and January 13th.
Oh.
On
the
the
what?
on the consolidated, the comprehensive financial report.
Okay, there was a motion already? All those in favor?
So,
Aye.
if it's all right with you, I'll just.
Okay.
That's both, right?
Both of them.
Yeah,
You haven't done one for the
I'll draft it.
17th?
Okay.
Last Tuesday?
I knew nothing
Okay,
about.
thank you, thanks
all
Steve,
of
thank you for everything,
I think
thanks
that meeting was
everybody.
bad. Did we have minutes from last week? I wasn't there, I was curious.
That really should come from me.
Oh.
No, I
Last
didn't.
week.
yeah, no, I'm happy.
Selectmen?
Next week, 17th?
What am I talking about?
Is there a meeting on the 17th?
Yeah.
The minute, the Board of Selectmen.
Oh,
Yeah, we have one.
okay, we did not
On Monday,
meet.
like,
They
all
did,
night.
they did the minutes.
But.
No, that was the policy.
Because our
Once I get this
secretary
formatted, it'll be fine. It's just
didn't know that we had
first
posted that meeting,
That's great.
simply because she's not on the email.
I just not understand, if I don't remember to put her on there,
So
then
you should
I
put
should
her on
just ask
the
so she
email,
gets everything. Yep,
so everybody gets it
Yeah.
at one time.
yeah,
Now, Betsy, the policies are all over, there's no more.
right, we're
Till
done with
further
that for a
notice,
little
yeah.
while, a couple months anyway, a
That's
few
what I
months.
meant.
Yeah.
Yes,
Take a
yes.
break.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
Okay, yeah,
Motion to
definitely.
adjourn, we already do
Oh,
that?
we, oh, no, I don't think we did.
So moved.
Maybe wants to, having so much fun.
I already have one.
Yeah,
Second.
all right,
So I make a motion, second, and approve it?
Yes.
all's
Yes,
in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
all on myself.